Welcome back to Because Miami. Roy, how are you feeling ever since the breakup with you and spring break?
Neglected.
You're right?
Yeah, I'm feeling
Are you
depressed.
happy to not be on Ocean Drive?
Of course
anymore?
I am. I'm ecstatic not to be over there right now.
Yes, but it's Ultra Week, and you are 6 feet away from, like, the porta potties here at Ultra.
I mean, why do you have to bring me down like this? I mean, come on. I'm trying to celebrate not being in South Beach, but now you're just making me sad again. Now I got to deal with this over here with the young people.
This Roy is rolling right now. The kitchen is fully stocked with Molly this weekend for Ultra Music Festival here in Miami. It literally is feet away. Like,
yes.
You are like
literal feet.
Yeah, they do sound tests and the whole building shakes over here from the base. I'm very, very excited, Roy, because the Florida legislative session has mercifully ended.
Thank God.
And what we celebrate more than anything these days in Florida is the laws that don't pass in the Florida legislature. Like that's like, we're like, oh shit, dodge that bullet, you know? And because really the less they get done, the better it is for Floridians, it seems. And some of the headlines out of Florida following the legislative session is like the war on woke is, if not over, has been a failure. And, this is obviously since DeSantis's, the unceremonious end to his presidential primary campaign, came in third place this week in the Republican presidential campaign, a primary, Republican primary here in Florida. But people are talking about all the shit that he wanted to get done, some of the high-profile anti-woke legislation that failed this session. To talk about it is Florida man and new college graduate and a writer for The Guardian, Rolling Stone, Gawker, Deadspin, NBC, Esquire, Vice, most recently TruthDig.com. You know him as Mabute. How am I?
Mabute.
Yeah, no, that's when this is how this is what Ron DeSantis complains about during my boot. How
what are you doing?
What's that? How do you say it? How do you say it?
Oh, that's BS. No, totally BS.
It was Mabute. That was what I picked.
My boot. Who's booty?
Booty, yeah.
Your booty. Okay. Most importantly, Jeb, you are the co-host of the podcast It's Christmas Town, which does the important work of explicating, like the complex stories and poetry that they are, Hallmark movies.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, as a Florida resident, I want to be prepared for my golden years here. I don't want to go in blind. So I'm already watching what they watch.
I love it. There should be a Hallmark movie that takes place in the Villages, which I guess maybe they couldn't because it would just be about them passing STDs around to each other, I feel.
Right, and having different sort of truck nuts for your golf cart, I
Right.
guess, that are kind of color-coded for what it is you're willing to do.
Yes, that's all. It's all. You don't know about this, Roy? You look blank-faced.
No, I had no idea. Truck nuts?
Yes, truck nuts. They're like these sort of like scrunchy-looking, like colored things that like they're red and blue and green and orange and yellow and purple, and you put them on your golf cart because it's like a golf cart community, and it indicates to other denizens of the Villages what sex acts you're willing to partake in.
Huh. Okay. And these are old people.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
the Villages is a retirement community,
Ugh.
effectively. Yeah. You
Wow.
want to talk more about? It's also like the STD capital of the state of Florida. I think we should talk just about this now. It's gonorrhea town. That's going to be the new hall. Do they have a gazebo? You know, in a Hallmark movie, you have to have a gazebo.
Yeah, it's pretty standard. I don't know what the Villages has, but I do like the idea that we're taking rumors about what kids do on the bus so we can have a moral panic about teenagers. And now we're making it about senior citizens. It's like, he's got lavender truck nuts. That means he's into cuck play. We've got to get granddad out of there.
Wait, I know what Villages has. Syphilis. That's what the Villages has. So, Jeb, the Washington Post reported among some of the failed legislation this session, the banning of rainbow flags from public buildings in Florida, the banning of the removal of Confederate monuments, requiring transgender people to use their sex assigned at birth on driver's licenses, forbidding local and state government officials from using transgender people's pronouns. None of these things made their way through the legislature this year. Some people are sort of celebrating, the war on woke is dead. What does this indicate to you?
I think that, two things. Like, DeSantis is cooked, so his legislature no longer needs to humor him because he's not going anywhere. They have to run again in Tallahassee this November, or many of them do. He doesn't. So I think there's just obvious self-interest there. But I think also they've taken a look at what's happened in these special elections recently around the country, and they figured out that, like, once America gets to meet the people from Moms for Liberty, they don't like them. Like, most of the war on woke stuff has been a net loser.
Yeah, well, let's talk about, Moms for Liberty, one of them was nominated to be on the State Ethics Commission. She did not get voted through. Obviously, they had a humiliating appearance on 60 Minutes. You had DeSantis coming out last month effectively saying, maybe we screwed up with this book ban or whatever, that maybe it's going, some people are abusing it or taking it too far, which is exactly, it's like, who could have predicted that? Everybody could have predicted that. So he was walking back the book ban, and you have now you have the courts, conservative courts no less, judges that were appointed by Donald Trump, saying that that they've gone too far. That the appeals court slammed Florida's Stop Woke law for committing, quote, the greatest First Amendment sin, end quote, in trying to regulate how businesses train their own and treat their own employees. Is there a tide turning here, or is this just wishful thinking?
I'm torn. I always want to think that there's a tide turning, but I vote for Democrats, so I just assume that there's some horrible twist where I'm going to lose right at the end. Yeah. It might have just been bad timing on his part. If he'd waited another couple of years, if he'd had, if this had been his first term and he could wait until his second, the federal judiciary might have become so bug fuck crazy that got through. But there seems to be enough, I think it probably doesn't hurt. It probably didn't help that so much of the Republican rhetorical cause has been the defense of free speech everywhere. No limitations. So to suddenly have this imposition just seemed a little bit too baldly gross.
And now there's a settlement by the state to clarify, quote unquote, clarify the don't say gay law. And now you can say gay. Because teachers, parents, administrators were all petrified about what you couldn't say. And now it's like, okay, as long as it's not in the context of actual curriculum, you can have books in school libraries with LGBTQ plus characters and themes. If students want to bring up in the course of conversation, but not curricula, questions about their sexuality. Again, all very predictable, no?
Right. Yeah. The problem with this practice, or these laws as they were practiced, was that they built in enough loopholes for anybody who didn't have any say in the local school system to create havoc. Right. So you have a case of a guy up in the northern part of the state who was responsible for, I think, 400 different attempts at pulling books from the curriculum around the rest of the state. And that incentivizing chaos that works for you eventually becomes, impracticable for people who want to live in it, right? And we could have, all the critics of these laws could have told you the same thing. Like, the idea of removing sexual orientation from the classroom is a farce because it's already present in the classroom. We don't take it as an expression of sexual orientation every time you read a book that has a man and a wife in it. Right. Heterosexuality is represented. And so if they just sort of taken a look at how often that comes up naturally, it would have been very easy to see, like, okay, well, here's all the ways that we're going to get sued, because people are going to be fed up. It's going to be too difficult to negotiate. And that's exactly what happened. Maybe, again, if they'd waited a couple of years and the federal judiciary was more compliant, then fine. But, as experienced on the ground, people don't like it. People want to be able to send their kids to school and have them read books, and they don't want to write a permission slip. They don't want to deal with extra forms to let them read something that was in the curriculum 3 years ago and nobody blinked at.
Before we go, I don't mean to give this short shrift, but we are running out of time. I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about something you wrote about recently at Truth Dig. Our friend, Florida journalist Tim Burke, who was recently arrested for, from what I could tell, doing a journalism. What happened? Where is the injustice here, and how can people help?
Okay, so anybody listening who recognizes the name Tim Burke but can't quite place it, he was the guy who instantly had all those GIFs up on Twitter for Deadspin for years. And if you ever saw that video of news anchors all saying the exact same op-ed in 20 different newsrooms around the country, that was him. Tim is very, very good at pulling video. And what he did was he pulled video that Fox News had streaming essentially to other Fox employees of Kanye saying extremely Hitlerific stuff off the record to Tucker Carlson that Tucker Carlson and his show edited out because they didn't want to admit that they were interviewing a completely insane Nazi. So Tim found that and he published it. Basic journalism, but it is being treated as hacking. So he had his entire livelihood seized by the federal government, all his computers, all the stuff that he uses to do work. And he's facing jail time. And we've seen some really ugly op-eds from the Tampa Bay Times, which is nominally a wonderful paper, trying to classify him as not a journalist. And it's absurd on its face. I mean, he had contracts out to do journalism work for the entire time I've known him, which is about 15 years. He has always operated as a journalist, whether full-time or not. And if he winds up going to prison for basically grabbing hold of something that was very easily accessible via non-illegal means, right? That is extraordinarily terrifying for journalists everywhere. And he also needs help. So if you want to go to the Tim Burke Legal Fund, I believe it is, Burke, Tim Burke, or just Google something like Tim Burke Legal Fund, you can donate, and he really needs the help.
Hitlerific, I think, is the name of Kanye's new album, Roy, if I'm not mistaken. Jeb Lund, thank you so much for being here. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
On Tuesday of this week, Florida had its presidential primary elections, although it turns out it was just a Republican presidential primary election because the Democratic Party of Florida canceled the Democratic primary election, which seemed to have a bit of a down ballot effect because in addition to the primaries, there were local elections, Roy. There were mayors and commissioners and council people that were elected. And, I'm always saying the Democrats never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Well, the headlines out of Florida this week are Florida Dems in disarray. Here to decide whether or not that's fair or that's just, the media being engaging in some Dem bashing is the president of Fernand Amandi International, one of Florida's most prominent pollsters, headquartered here in Miami. Fernand Amandi, what do you think? Florida Dems in disarray, fair, unfair?
Billy, I think it's fair, maybe not just only on this one incident, but rather what we've seen in this trend line that's been a very negative one for Florida Democrats, really dating back now 12 years, going from the halcyon days of having delivered the state of Florida's electoral votes in 2012, again to Barack Obama after having done so in 2008. It's just been a record of futility since. And I think what we saw this past Tuesday is another reminder of why Florida Democrats are just not in a good place right now.
The chair of the Florida Democrats, Nikki Fried, getting a lot of criticism for canceling the presidential primary, basically handing it to Joe Biden, who I think it's fair to say would have been the inevitable winner regardless, or irregardless, as we say in Miami. But the criticism now is that what that has done is it depressed voter turnout, which already depressed statewide. I think it was like 20% statewide voter turnout, but it was particularly bad for Democrats and may have had an effect of getting Republicans elected in some of these local races. Is that accurate?
Billy, it is. And I think there's really two schools of thought on the whole, should we or should we not cancel the Florida Democratic primary? If there were no other races on the ballot on that day, in other words, if it was just people voting for the presidential ballot, there's an argument to be made that why waste time, why waste resources, no need to do that. Where it becomes indefensible, and I think part of the reason why the FDP is getting so much criticism today is because, as you alluded to, there were other municipal races on that ballot on that day. And by, in essence, sending the message to Democrats, don't really bother, don't worry about this because we're not going to have the primary election, the presidential primary election, a lot of folks took the message or understood the message that there was no other election that day. And because of the unintended consequences where we did see a lot of Democrats lose races or flip seats in seats that should be democratically held today, I think you can see why there's so much consternation and angst over the decision.
You've got locations where Biden was like plus 20, plus 30, whatever, that elected Republican mayors or commissioners, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, I think the starkest example is the city of Delray Beach, right, which is in West Palm Beach County, a very Democratic county, almost one of the heart of the Democratic areas. And this is a seat that a Republican has no business winning under any set of circumstances, particularly in this kind of polarized environment where we find ourselves. And a lot of these municipal races, Billy, are partisan proxy races. But in this case, a Republican won because Democratic turnout in Delray, despite being an overwhelmingly Democratic city, was just horrible. So I think that was one of the bigger examples. You also see municipalities, mid-sized cities like Clearwater, where there was a Democratic wipeout in what used to be Democratic-leaning Pinellas County, other parts of Broward County, Lauderdale by the Sea, races where Republicans are building their bench, having folks now serving in municipal office in seats that should be and would have been held for the Democrats had probably that presidential primary taken place.
And now in a pretty vital presidential election year, national election year, 2024, you also have a situation where Democrats in Florida are just, they're not exercising the muscle, right? Of voting, of getting involved this year at the risk of the muscle atrophying. And there are also new laws in the state of Florida about VBMs, about vote by mail, which basically purge. People were getting for a while, like signed up for automatic ballots, right? Just send me my ballot. When I get it in the mail, I'll vote and I'll send it in. Now they purge that system. And so you have to stay engaged and involved. And now Republicans, in addition to an advantage of voter registrations, probably have a disproportionate advantage on vote by mail, which just means more Republicans, even if they didn't have a voter registration advantage, more Republicans will be voting. Is that a problem?
I mean, of course it's a problem. I mean, all the more reason, and as you well lay out, the Republicans are not playing fair in the state of Florida. They clearly are trying to stack the deck, so to speak, and take advantage and lean into their total control of all of the elements of the state. All the more reason, though, why Democrats should take advantage of every possible opportunity to, as you say, exercise that muscle, develop and build the voting behavior, get some of the enthusiasm going again. Having people go out, even if it's casting a ballot to affirm why they're supporting President Biden again for re-election, which is in and of itself kind of an empowering thing to do. I just don't understand the reason for why they wouldn't do it. We've heard arguments, by the way, Billy, like precedent. Well, they didn't do it in 96 when you had a Democratic incumbent for president, or 2012. And my answer to that is, so what? Rules are meant to be broken and precedents are meant to be changed. Why not take advantage of doing an opportunity here where you can get the base going? And especially with these municipal races on the ballot, that's where I think it now runs into malpractice territory.
And it's a whole new world. The state has changed. The demographics have changed. Like, how can you say, oh, we're going to do the same shit we did 20 years ago or whatever, or even 10 years ago, or even 6, 7, 8 years ago, 8 years ago for that matter. Fernand, we're going to do a top 5, and feel free to jump in at any point. I might ask for your reaction of the most embarrassing tweets to come out of the Florida elections this week. They will include both cringe tweets from Democrats and Republicans dunking on the Democrats. Let's start with number 5 from Daniel, who is the editor-in-chief and founder of Bolts magazine. It says, in referring to or quoting a tweet from Drew Savicki that says, looks like the decision to cancel Florida's Democratic primary has gone poorly for Florida Dems. Apparently, Republicans have flipped several mayorships in some heavily Democratic cities. Daniel adds, zero-dimensional chess. Oh, man. Number 4 is from...
We got a winner at the gate already, Billy.
Is that the winner? Yeah, that was number 5. It gets worse, dude. Number 4 is from Florida Senator and former Florida GOP Chairman Blaze Ingaglia. Roy, you might know him by his porn name, Blaze Ingaglia. It says...
Thanks, Bill.
You look like you're going to chime in there. I wasn't sure
no.
if you had anything to contribute. Roy's rolling, Fernand. It is, it's ultra weak here.
Second-hand rolling.
Yeah. Blaze Ingaglia writes, if I had made the same egregious strategic blunder Nikki Fried and the Florida Dems made when I was chairman of the Florida GOP, people would have called for my resignation, full stop. But then he continues after the statement, full stop. I'm guessing there are some pretty unhappy candidates who will do so after tonight. What a dumb move.
There's a hashtag there.
No, there is a hashtag, flop hole. Yes, flop hole.
Ouch.
Number 3 is from Philip Perez, who is the executive director of the Florida Democrats. He quote tweets a chart from Marco Ferreri that says that shows the rankings from the Florida Republican primary, with Donald Trump getting 81% of the vote, Nikki Haley getting almost 14% of the vote, and Ron DeSantis getting less than 4% of the vote. And Marco writes, losing close to 20% to retired candidates in your home state of Florida with a, crusty face emoji. Philip Perez, this executive director of the Florida Dems, puts 3 red sirens followed by a Trump is in trouble in Florida. Fernand, he tweeted that multiple times during Tuesday night, which just felt like, it's just is it delusion? Like, what is he talking about? Trump to me the debate is Trump going to win Florida by single digits or double digits, right?
Look, I think the only thing wrong in Philip's defense with that tweet is the last 2 words, right? In Florida. I do think that the results for Trump in Florida are indicative of what could be the national problem, because it's a pattern, Billy, that we've now seen play out everywhere. Despite Trump basically having won the nomination for the Republican Party, he continues to struggle to get, north of 80% of that vote. So that 20% that we're seeing everywhere, that's going to hurt him nationally. Now, is it going to hurt him in Florida? Is he in trouble in Florida? I'm not quite ready to say that yet. In fact, I think it's anything but, truthfully.
Come on, dude. Number 2. This is right from the Florida Dems. Cringe, man. This is with some sort of a link to a Secure Act Blue fundraising page that's with an image that says, "Take back local, grassroots support wins." The tweet reads, "Democrats showed us yesterday that Florida is winnable," all caps. "We're building momentum in 2024, and we can't do it without your continued support." Fernand Amandi, you are a pollster. Is Florida winnable for the Democrats? I don't even know what that means anymore.
Billy, at the risk, I don't want this to sound like at least you or me are piling on Florida Democrats. Obviously, I'm a Democrat. I want Democrats to win. I've seen Democrats win in this state before I was involved and helped lead campaigns where we won the state. But I actually think that these types of messaging are doing a great disservice to the ability for Florida Democrats to win, because it is creating this totally false sense of expectations about where the party is, where the standings are now, how the registration numbers are. Look, anything can happen in politics, and I'm not discounting some sort of, what's that? Something like a Deepwater Horizon, perfect storm type of event that could all of a sudden deliver Florida in November. But the odds are overwhelmingly against it. And until Democrats, I think, acknowledge, hey, look, we're looking at a 6 to 8 to 10-year plan. Let's not make it about the direct election cycle in front of us. Let's use it as an opportunity to build out the infrastructure and the capacity so that soon we're competitive again. This happens in sports all the time. Teams say, look, we're going to have a rebuilding year or two so that we can position ourselves to then compete for championships in the future. I think the unwillingness of Florida Democrats to be honest about that, given the standings of where things are now, that's hurting the party efforts. I really believe that.
Sports.
I think that metaphor was apt, though, because I've only been a Democrat since 2018 here in Florida, and nothing prepared me better for that than being a Dolphins fan. I'll tell you, the last 40 years. I'll tell you that. Now, number one on our top five is going to be somewhat redundant after your statement. It's from Dave Trotter, who writes, "The Florida Dems are no longer electable statewide. I've run a number of models just for the hell of it, and the GOP floor in Florida is 53%. No best case scenario, quote unquote, gets the Democrats over 50% unless a third party candidate takes votes from the GOP. It's over." I'm sorry we had to play that sound effect there. There's nothing to celebrate here. By the way, there's nothing to celebrate even if you're a Republican. I mean, if you're certainly not if you're an American. You should want as many healthy, vibrant political parties in the market of ideas and policies as possible. I mean, if you're a capitalist, competition is good for the marketplace. One-party rule is not healthy. It's not capitalistic. It's not democratic. But Fernand, numbers guy to numbers guy. Do Trotter's numbers bear out?
Well, first, I mean, I think you make such an important point. Look, the truth of the matter is the Republican Party of Florida that have had total control over the state now for over a generation. Think about it. Since 1998, that was over 25 years ago. They've had the governor's mansion. They've had now virtual total control of the legislature for well over 20 years.
Super majority.
Super majority. They own it, right? And they've done extraordinary destruction to this state. So none of us say this with any joy. There's no schadenfreude here at all. But unfortunately, I think Dave Trotter's tweets, if you look at the fundamentals now, are in line. Democrats now have an 850,000 vote registration disadvantage. Billy, if you go back to 1988, in 1988, Democrats had an 860,000 vote advantage. So we're talking about an almost 2 million vote swing in something like 35 years in what used to be the nation's prize swing state. So unless something fundamentally and radically changes here, where people are willing to invest over the short and long term, put in real resources, have an accountable strategic plan, and say we're going to do this, the building block steps little by little to position Florida to be competitive again, it's hard to argue with Dave Trotter's analysis.
Two things real quick before we go. First, a yes or no question. I presume what you just told us, the Democratic National Party knows what you know. It is not a swing state anymore. Biden, not only is he not going to win Florida, he doesn't need Florida to win the presidency. So, yes or no, is there going to be do they care? It's a bigger question. Do the Democrats at a national level care about who gets elected locally or governor of Florida? And are they going to invest anything in Florida when they don't need it to win nationally?
Well, yes, they obviously care. They would love to see Florida have a Democratic governor and be competitive again as it's enjoyed being for the last several cycles prior to the last two. But really, the second question you ask, I think, is the most important one. Will they actually invest? And there's an argument to be made, a credible argument that says, look, maybe they shouldn't. We know Florida is a critically expensive state. And right now, the most important priority for the country, Billy, and the world is for Joe Biden to be reelected and preserve our American democracy against the autocratic totalitarian project that day one dictator Donald Trump will take over if he regains power. He does not need Florida to do that. So I think if you think about it from a triage perspective, number one, you got to get the 270, and I wouldn't waste a cent in Florida getting there. Now, if this time in August, September, the floor falls out from Trump, he totally collapses, Florida looks like it might be in play, but then again, so might Utah and Wyoming and other states that, aren't on the radar right now. Sure, maybe you put a little money in there to push it over the top. But I think you got to focus first on winning the presidency, re-election, holding the White House. If that happens, then they can look into 26, 2028, 2030, 2032 about fortifying Florida, because it's just too important and too big of a state in the national conversation to completely ignore and let go.
Fernand Amandi at Amandi on air on Twitter. On your way out the door and outside looking in from Evan Power, the current Florida GOP chair, obviously after the Ziegler threesome sex scandal. You might remember the Moms for Taking Liberties, Roy, scandal. He took over. He drove his DUI right into the seat of power, the chairmanship of the Florida GOP. He's dunking on Nikki Fried. Good morning, Florida, especially to Nikki Fried, who is invaluable to the success of the Florida GOP. May your term be long. To be clear, this is the chairman of the Florida GOP wishing the chairwoman of the Florida Democrats, thank you for all of your help, and may your chairwomanship be long.
Kind of like how Heat fans feel about Doc Rivers. As long as he's coaching, we're good. We love it. Sports.
In his 20 years running the Miami Parking Authority and 4 years as city manager, the highest paid position in the city, Art Noriega, who does not live in the city, appears to have exploited his public position for private profit, directing at least $2 million in taxpayer money to his wife's overpriced furniture company.
Can't fight City Hall, Roy, but that doesn't stop me from trying, I'll have you know.
I mean, you've been beaten up by City Hall for a very long time now.
I'm doing my fair share of pushing back, I think.
I don't know. It seems like a handicap match now. They're jumping you. Using chairs, sledgehammers.
Trying to punch up here, Roy, because this is effectively a criminal racketeering enterprise masquerading as a municipal government that is running this town, the city we are sitting in right now, that neither of us live in.
Right.
Hang on.
You're goddamn right, meatball.
So, the latest scandal, which we may have talked about before, is the city manager. His wife has this overpriced furniture company, and he first is the Miami Parking Authority executive director, and now as the city manager has been directing contracts to his wife's company to the tune, I think the total so far is $2 million and counting that we know of. And this was a scandal that was revealed in early January of this year by WLRN, our friends Danny Rivero and Josh Ceballos. And he responded to it at the January 11th meeting.
In spite of the fact that most of the information that's been put in the public realm is either inaccurate or incomplete, I wanted to just put forth to you my intent to come back ahead of the next city commission meeting with a full reporting and accounting of exactly the vendor relationship. I'm going to address it, and I'm going to address it head on.
Head on, Roy. So that he said ahead of the next city commission meeting, which would have been January 25th.
Right.
And any guess what happened on January 25th?
He went head on past it.
Not a goddamn thing happened. Crickets. All right, nothing. And then the meeting after that, nothing. And the meeting after that, nothing. Finally, he says, you know what? I'm going to deal with it at the March 14th meeting. So we all wait with bated breath 9 weeks later after he promised this. We all wait for it. Now, what happened was that this was a long commission meeting. He basically ran out the clock, right? So it's after 9 p.m. at night already last week. And we're waiting for this full accounting, this conflict of interest scandal involving his wife's furniture company that he is all of a sudden, that is spending all this money, taxpayer money, mind you. And basically, it comes time for him to speak. It's after 9 p.m., as I said, and the commissioners are like, hey, listen, why don't we defer this to the next meeting in April? It's late. We want people to be here to be able to hear this in a public, as you promised, a full public airing and reporting, and he has a total meltdown.
I'm not waiting another month to make this presentation. I'm not going to sit here and be subjected to the kind of stuff that was said today, by the way, which half of it was lies made up and fabricated. I'll distribute the report. I'll meet with each of you individually. You can grill me to no end. I will release the report to the media so that there is a full disclosure of what happened and what transpired. But this has been a little arduous to kind of wait. And in all fairness, I'm just getting hit with really a lot of misinformation, a lot of allegations that are completely untrue.
3 important things to note there. First of all, he's complaining about waiting another month and this having been hanging over his head for all these weeks, for all these months. The delay was solely his doing. So it's such gaslighting. He's like, well, this has been hanging over my head. It's like, dude, you promised this on January 25th. There's nobody to blame but you for this. You were free and clear to present your side of the story at any time that you wanted to, and you're the one who failed to do it. And so now he's like I said, he ran out the clock and then tried to play it like this is an inconvenience to me. Fortunately, some of the 3 of the 5 commissioners, 3 of his 5 bosses pushed back, but he told them to go pound sand. The insubordination, Roy, is extraordinary. It's off the charts. Second thing I wanted to point out, Roy, is he's calling me a liar. Did you hear what he said? Oh, these lies and this
He didn't say your name, but we all know who he is.
Well, that was about my commentary from the beginning that you heard, a few minutes ago in the show, and that I made live to his face at public comment. He's calling me a liar, Roy. But he did say my name, Roy.
Oh.
I'll sit with Billy Corben across the table and I'll present everything to him. I have no issue with that at all, by the way. Billy Corben to me is someone that, clearly has a lot of followers and a lot of people that are interested in what he says. I'm happy to give him the information. I'm happy to sit with him. I'll answer whatever questions he has. I have a long history with Billy Corben. So I'm not hiding from it and I won't run from it.
We have a chair right there to your left.
Lots of chairs. We have lots of chairs here.
Right as well.
Yeah,
with microphones.
Yeah,
that we can turn on.
Did we buy these chairs from his wife's furniture company? They're about $600-700 from his furniture company. When he said Billy Corben is an individual, I thought he was going to say
you are a vile little man.
So that's some good news, Roy.
You got a long history with him.
We've got I don't know what he's talking about. Our brief but bitter affair. Oh, what the hell does he mean? A long history. Whatever it is, he is welcome on this show. Any of these chairs from Praderi Furniture, from his wife's furniture company. Maybe he has an exclusive contract. He can only sit his tuchus on a chair from his wife's company.
Stand in.
Now, here's the thing. He did. So Friday came and went. No report. But Monday morning, after we started to point out the fact that where the hell is this thing he promised to distribute to the mayor and the commissioners and the media, he finally released the report. But you're not going to believe what happened, Roy. Or maybe you will.
Yeah, I believe it.
It was after calling me a liar and saying that the press reporting since January has been filled with misinformation.
He lied.
He lied in the report. It's filled with incomplete misinformation. And he had to walk it back immediately as soon as we called him out on it. We're like, wait a second. These figures aren't right. The math ain't mathing here. This Miami math here, 2.2 pounds is a kilo. That's all the only Miami math I know. But Miami city manager walks back data on furniture spending. And now he won't answer questions, Roy. So first of all, he says, I'm going to bring this report immediately. It takes him 9 weeks to put it together. He says, I'll answer anybody's questions. I'll sit down with anybody. I'll sit down with
Billy Corben.
Little Billy Corben.
One-on-one. He releases the report and 24 hours later goes, whoop, my bad. And now he's not answering anybody's questions. He has not committed. I've now asked for over a week, starting last Thursday night, to get it on the books, get him on the show, get a sit-down one-on-one with him, ask him anything, as he offered publicly right there. Nothing. The Miami Herald had an interview scheduled with him for Wednesday, a couple days ago. Didn't happen. He canceled it immediately. So the guy who called me a liar said the media reports were filled with incomplete and false narratives and misinformation, releases. The amount of disdain and disrespect this guy has for his constituents. This guy is the highest paid city employee. He makes over $400,000 a year plus benefits in a city where the median household income is $47,000. This guy had 3 out of his 5 bosses on the city commission saying, you need to make this presentation at the next meeting. And he just told everybody, gave us all just a great big middle finger. And the fish rots from the head down, man. Like, this is the city manager. And then you have a mayor, like, and in his immortal words,
if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out.
I mean, it's pretty funny. He just basically said 2 + 2 = Thomas Jefferson.
That's Miami math. Or equals Julia Tuttle. I don't know. What would be the Miami version of
Claude
that?
Pepper.
So, Claude D. Pepper. That's right. And the final insult of the week from this guy, just giving everybody the middle finger, this lying, corrupt Miami mafioso, he just announced a new Miami Mafia member has been initiated into the Omerta. Art Noriega, who, as we just discussed, is under fire for a conflict of interest scandal involving millions in taxpayer dollars and his wife's furniture company. He just hired disgraced ex-Doral city manager Barbie Hernandez after she was fired in January for, quote, lack of integrity and judgment, a clear conflict of interest, and deliberate misuse of city funds, personnel, and equipment for the personal and political benefit of her husband. The city manager under fire for a conflict of interest scandal involving city money and his wife hires a woman who was just fired as the Doral city manager because of a conflict of interest scandal involving city money and her husband.
You're saying that again like I'm surprised.
So get this right. She's too corrupt for Doral, okay? She's too corrupt for Doral, but Art Noriega hires her for the city of Miami to, quote, oversee operations for the departments of Code Enforcement, General Services Administration, by the way, who buys the furniture for the city, Human Services, Innovation and Technology, Parks and Recreation, and Solid Waste, which is good because they're all full of shit.
Yeah.
But all of those departments are among some of the most corruptible and vulnerable in the city. And remember, Roy, this is the same tactic that criminal organizations use. You bring in compromised people, right? People who have no opportunities, who you know will be loyal because you've brought them in and given this woman's going to get paid 6 figures. So she presumably will do their bidding regardless or irregardless of laws or ethics, because you got to protect the hustle. It's mutually assured destruction because they all have some kind of grift going. And so she is going to come in there, presumably, allegedly, to protect the hustle. But it's not all.
That's not all. There's more.
Yeah, I mean, the Miami Mafia remains undefeated, I guess, to your point at the top of the segment. But there are some because Miami victories to celebrate.
Oh, wait, we
this
won
week.
something?
We actually won something. You remember the town of Surfside?
Yes, I do.
Shlomo Danziger, the real estate, and then there's that real estate hustler, bully, vice mayor, Jeff Rose, who had an 18-year-old activist arrested by the Tauntaun Makut there in Surfside. Well, clean sweep at the elections on Tuesday.
Wow.
Everybody's out. Everybody's out.
Hashtag because Miami.
Shlomo's out. Jeff Rose is out. Their third complicit co-conspirator, Fred Landsman, got rejected. So it's like a whole new government there in Surfside. And the reason why we're celebrating is because I think we might have, that parody song, shout out to Andrew Streeter, might have influenced the outcome. By the way, there are only like 4,000 people vote in that whole town in that whole election. And I think the guy who, the former mayor who beat the Shlomo Danziger won by like 100 votes. And so our Miami moment, which is really a Surfside moment, and a shout out to the voters in Surfside for saving their town at least for another 2 years. There was a random dude, literally, bro, making a victory lap around Surfside Town Hall, and he was blasting on the radio while waving bye-bye to the mayor, the former mayor Shlomo Danziger and Jeff Rose, who were cleaning their offices out at that time on Tuesday evening. He is blasting our Because Miami parody song about Surfside and the elections and how to be more responsible voters. And man, Man, it feels good, Roy, to have a small victory in a city that is all of 8 blocks, by the way. 8 blocks. But this guy is making a victory lap, literally, bro. Cocaine's.
Yeah.